Good morning. It's Tuesday the 30th of November. I wonder whether you think of yourself as a traditionalist or someone who is more revolutionary and unorthodox in their thinking and attitudes. Do you perhaps take pride in holding to those values handed down by previous generations, or are you more likely to strive for change and new solutions to problems in life and society? Perhaps the traditional and the revolutionary are not as far apart as we sometimes imagine. Both can be given a negative or a cynical spin, as in the description of tradition as peer pressure from the dead. But I prefer the more positive angle as expressed in a phrase attributed to the composer Gustav Mahler, who in many ways was an innovator rather than a traditionalist as usually understood. But he wrote that tradition is not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire. That reminded me of something I read many years ago by Bishop John Robinson, notorious to some for his book Honest to God, that the early Christians met together not to worship a dead memory, but to celebrate a living presence. Ashes are all that is left once the fire has gone out, and they are the consequence of doing nothing. But if the fire is worth preserving, it will need to be replenished with fresh fuel, not just once, but many times and regularly. There are frequent examples in history of social and reforming movements which arise on a wave of passion and then in a process which can take many years try to become more structured and efficient and end up as bureaucracies. This can be observed in the fields of health, education, local government, where vast amounts of money are regularly committed to the latest reorganization in order to become supposedly more streamlined and fit for purpose. Yet if the original fiery vision is lost, the worship of ashes is all that remains. So is the Christian Church just another example of this process? Or indeed, what about our own personal faith? Probably most who view these reflections have inherited some sort of tradition regarding the basics of faith and what church is all about. But how far is it a personal commitment? How much is it about ashes and how much about fire? I was speaking with someone recently, not a church attender, and she was regretting the removal of what she called the lovely old dark wooden pews from her local parish church and their replacement with comfortable chairs. It's just not the same, she said. Well, no, it wouldn't be. If something is alive, it changes and develops. But perhaps she was more interested in ashes than she was in preserving the fire. The church and society in general, I suggest, needs more traditionalists. Not people who will lament the changes over time, not those who resist innovative and creative ways to connect with 21st century people, but people who are prepared to be guardians of the fire of the gospel. So Paul urges Timothy, for example, to fan into flame the gift of God within him, the implication being that if left alone it will go out, but given attention it can become a powerful blaze. Sometimes it's surprising how a fire can appear to have died, yet a little draught, a little kindling wood, and it will revive. This should encourage all of us if we feel that our faith has lost its impetus, its focus, its passion, if we feel it has been sidelined by things which in the end are less important. It should encourage us to go back to its origins in God's forgiving and renewing grace poured into our lives, enabling us to become aware that for us too, faith in Jesus Christ can be a lived reality and not a dead memory. So let's end with a verse from a hymn which is traditional by Charles Wesley. Traditional in the best sense, in that it urges us to preserve the fire. See how great a flame aspires, kindled by a spark of grace. Jesus' love the nations' fires, sets the kingdoms on a blaze. To bring fire on earth he came, kindled in some hearts it is. Oh, that all might catch the flame, all partake the glorious bliss. Amen. Have a good day.